Hey guys, welcome back to our channel Glitched Velocity. I'm your host Wazahat, and today in this video I'm gonna demonstrate latest update of my custom light shader for CopperCube 3D game engine. This shader allows you to incredibly enhance your graphics or visuals of your 3D game or your 3D objects, and it allows you to do normal mapping, specular mapping, ambient occlusion with bunch of different light properties or light options. As you can see on your screen, there is a car with specular highlights, normal mapping, and it looks real great. And then we have our alien or robot with no specular highlights and a blend of ambient and diffuse lighting. So the actual model is gray color, but as you can see, it is appearing brownish. And then we have a rhinoceros. So you can also apply the shader on animated objects as well. As you can see on your screen, we have a rhino with normal and base color with a plain white as specular texture or specular lighting. Then we have this metallic or nice looking glossy robot, 3D robot here. And you can also notice the real-time shadows are also working on the plane mesh, but it won't work on the object on which the shader is applied. And this is how it looks without any shader. And then we have our shader applied to it. Then we have turned off the ambient occlusion, and I'm toggling ambient occlusion on and off. And then we can change the ambient occlusion map with diffuse texture or black or white or normal map. It is just for the showcase of this video or the project. So you can do whatever you want with this shader. Then we have this nice T-Rex here, and it looks really cool with a dense normal mapping and a little bit specular highlights. And you'll also notice that the shadows of this project or this dinosaur T-Rex is really smooth or looks really great than the default real-time shadows of our CopperCube game engine. That's because I'm using a trick or a hack here which allows me to fake the real-time shadows, and I will show you how to do it in the last of the video, end of the video. So yeah, you can enhance your visuals incredibly with my custom point light shader, and it has been updated very well or with huge bugs fixes and major updates since the last version. And it is going to be a paid version, so you have to purchase it from 𝙎𝙪𝙪𝙙𝙪. So without further ado, now let's jump into the demonstration part. Let me just open this file here. I have already prepared this demo file. So right now we have our 3D model in our scene, which is this robot without any shader applied. And we have some point lights in our scene, and the background color is gray. And then we have a plane mesh here, which we are going to use for real-time shadows. As you can see, the real-time shadows are appearing here, and it has the default real-time shadows. So we are not going to use the trick or hack that I am talking about when we were watching the T-Rex video example. So let's begin the tutorial. So first we need to import the textures in our texture panel. As you can see, I have normal map and ambient occlusion and diffuse texture already in my texture panel, but I also need specular texture, or you can say metallic texture, in my texture panel here. So I'm going to add that by clicking add button here. Then I have this model final default material metallic texture here, which is our specular texture, and I'm going to import it in my texture panel here. Then I'm going to select my robot or the object on which we want to apply our shader. Then all we have to do is we have to go to view and edit and edit properties. Then go to materials tab and select our normal map and supply it as second texture for our object. Second texture is always going to be our normal map, and third one is going to be our specular map, and fourth one is our ambient occlusion map. So select our specular map, which is default material metallic and supply it as third texture for our object. Then we have our ambient occlusion map, and we will supply it as fourth texture in our object panel here. We already have some point lights, so we have 5 point lights in our scene. We can have unlimited amount of point lights, it doesn't matter at all. I'm using 5 here. And then we are going to apply the shader action. So I'm going to select our root scene node, then go to behavior, and then go to behaviors triggered by events when a key is pressed to something. And I'm going to change my key from A to F. And then I'm going to apply the scripted action. But first, let me put my key events window here so that you can see which key I'm pressing or which mouse button I'm clicking. So go here and search for shader action to use point lights. And then we will be provided with a bunch of different parameters here. As usual, first 4 parameters are the default parameters of our shader, which is the general parameters. So first one is our affecting node, and we have to select our robot here because it is the node on which we want to apply our shader to. And then we have affect all the materials. We can check it or uncheck it. We can check it to affect all the materials of our 3D object. We can uncheck it and specify a affecting material index or the material index in here to specify to affect a specific material by the shader. So then we have base material type. Suppose if we want to use transparent alpha texture or transparent additive texture, then we can change the base material type to something like 12, 13 or 14 or whatever we want. Then we have diffuse color. You can change it to whatever you want. For example, orange, blue, green. It is up to you. And then we have ambient color, and it is by default come with black as ambient color. But whenever you are using an ambient occlusion map, you have to use an ambient lighting other than black color. Otherwise, your ambient occlusion map will not appear on the object. So you have to use something else than the black. So it is always better to use 50% of the black color, which is our gray color. So I'm going to change it to gray because we are using an ambient occlusion map for this particular object. Then we can also change the diffuse color to gray, which is also 50% of our black color, which is 128 red, 128 green, and 128 blue. And what it will do is it will blend the ambient color and diffuse color accordingly. So we don't have to fiddle with it more and less. So then we have our specular lighting toggle here. We can uncheck it to turn off the specular lighting. We can check it back again to turn on the specular lighting. Then we have this very important parameter here, which is radius. So what this radius is, what this radius does is it creates a radius around our object. So suppose if we have created a radius of 100 around our object, then whenever a light node comes inside that radius, then that light node will start affecting our 3D object. So for example, it has a radius of 100, which is like this here. And right now it has only one light node. So whenever this light node is inside this radius, it is going to affect the 3D model. And all the light nodes that are outside that radius, for example, this one and this one, will not affect our 3D model. So you can specify a radius, for example, 5,000, 100, 50, whatever you want. And you can use unlimited amount of point lights in your scene, and it will be going to grab them or use them automatically. So if you move your 3D object here, then it will, wait a second. So if you move your robot here near this light, then this light will be ignored by the object and this light will be used. So this is how the shader automatically adjusts the lighting or decides which light has to used by the shader or ignored by the shader. So this is how it works. So it is all in the script. So you don't have to fiddle it with. So, but when in the previous version of the shader, you have to provide manually a single point light in the shader. So right now you don't have to do that manually in the shader, and the shader automatically does the difficult part for you. So we can provide something like 5000 here because we are already using 5-point lights in our scene. So if you are using 5-point lights, then you can supply whatever amount you want. If you're using more than 5-point lights, then it is always better to use a very small radius so that all the light nodes in your scene can be grabbed by the shader. Otherwise it will always use the default 5-point lights, which will be grabbed by the shader. So then we have our normal strength. So sometimes when you use the shader, then sometimes you are not satisfied with the normal mapping. You want to increase the strength of the normal mapping, or you want the normal mapping to be a bit sharp instead of the softness of the normal mapping. So what this parameter will do is it will increase the normal mapping strength, and your normal mapping will appear much more sharper and much more visible. So for in this video reference, I'm gonna put 0.2 here. Then we have specular properties. For example, light specular color, light specular gloss, light specular strength. And for now, I'm gonna leave them all on default values and click OK. And then I'm gonna press Ctrl F10. And sorry, I have to press Ctrl F10 instead of Ctrl F11. So I have by mistakenly pressed Ctrl F11. So if I press F now, then right now this is how it looks without any shader effect applied to the object. But if I press F, then you will see the magic of the shader. If I press F now, then you can see how the graphics have been improved, or the texture looks much more realistic. It is looking like as if it is some metal, or it shines, it glows. So yeah, it looks pretty much realistic. So we can see the ambient occlusion. You can see the neck part and the eye part clearly. That's because of the ambient occlusion map. So let's just tweak some settings here. For example, we can change the color of the specular lights to something like blue and test how it works. So if I press F, then you can see there is blue specular highlight here. And you can change other lights as well, but I'm not gonna do that. And then we can increase this normal strength to something like 50. And then you will notice that when I press F in my application, then the object will become darker and the specular lights will be gone. If I press F now, then you will see the specular highlights are now gone or is not visible, and the objects becomes a bit darker, or it looks like much more like stone, but you can also see some a little bit shimmering of the specular highlights. I'm not sure if you are able to see that, but I am able to see. It's not that much visible, but you can see the shimmering effect of the specular highlights. And let me just show you how to increase that. So if you change the specular gloss here to something like 1, 1, 1, 1, and 1. And now if I press the F key, then you will be able to see it more clearly. So now you can see the specular highlights, but it seems like the texture is a bit rusty, or the metal is a rusty. It is not actually a rusty texture, rust here. It is actually the normal map, which we have provided a strength of 50. So 50 is a bit higher strength, or you are not supposed to use that much strength for your normal maps. But as we have provided that strength to our normal map, it is giving us these weird effects, but it looks pretty cool. It still looks pretty cool and can be used to create uh, roughness, or you know rusty or rust looking metal or textures for our objects. And we can change back to our original settings by undoing all the changes. So we have 0 normal strength, and I'm gonna make it 0.2, and then 5000 radius, and leave all these settings to the default. Then we can change the color to green, and then we have specular strength, light specular strength. So what this will do is, let me just change it to 1000 here and 1000 here as well. And you will notice what happens when I press F now. If I press F, then you will notice that these two white specular highlights are much more brighter, or it appears like some sort of liquid is flowing, liquid oil is flowing on the object. So two specular lights highlights are much more visible than the other, and you can decrease it to something like 0.2 so that it will be less visible. If I press Ctrl F10 and test the application, and if I press F, then those two lights are less visible than the other lights. So this is how you can change the specular highlight strength, specular highlight color, and specular highlight gloss. So let me just quickly change the gloss to 1 instead of 40 and change all the settings to default. So use 1 here for the specular gloss. And you will notice that how it makes the whole object shiny, and how the specular highlights are becoming broader or wider, much wider. So you can see it is now affecting the whole object instead of some points or some dots or some spots on the object. We can change it back to something like 30 or 20. So I'm going to use 20 here, and I'm going to use 10 for some, and 5 for one. And if I test the application, you will see different results. Some of them are really tighter, and some of them are wider. So this is how you can play with the specular highlights. And you can also turn it off by going in here and turn off the toggle here of a specular highlighting. And test the application. If I press F, then you'll see there is no specular highlights, and the object is appearing with the lighting only, with no specular highlights. And what if I want to change the color? Let me quickly undo the changes for the specular highlights. We have 40, 40, 40, and let's change the specular strength to 1, specular color to white again. Yeah, we are pretty good to go. And now if I want to change the color of my light, all I have to do is I have to select any of the light of which I want to change the color, go to its attributes tab here, and as you can see, I have gray color for this light here. I can change it to something like green, blue, or whatever I want. So for example, blue. And then if I test the application now, if I press F, then you will notice that the object is now receiving blue light. So it looks really smooth, really cool, and it blends with the textures perfectly. We can change this light color as well to something like green. And if I press F, then you can see we have green and blue lighting on our object. And we can also increase the intensity of the lighting by changing the radius here. Right now it is 50. So if I change it to something like 500, then you will notice the object will receive much more green color than the blue one. And maybe it will completely blown out with the green color. You might be thinking that the green is not appearing, but that's because the object is rotating and the green color is appearing on uh, on this side only, and it is much more green than the previous setting. So the light intensity has been changed a bit, and it looks way more greenish and more shiny, and it looks like a polished color on the 3D object or the 3D model, and it gives really great effects or lighting to me. And as you have already seen, I have shown you some decent examples and demos in the beginning of the video. You have seen some creepy creatures, cars, rhinoceros, alien robots, and this one particular robot, and T-Rexes. And now this is all about the shader. So I have done a lot of improvements since the previous version. I have upgraded the shader heavily. Let me just show you what I have changed in the shader. So I have to go to Visual Studio Code, and so let me show you the change log here. So I have started creating this shader action in July 2021. Then I have updated it on December 17, 2021. Then on January 6, 2022. Then on February 9, 2022 till February 19, 2022. And today is February 20, and I'm gonna release this shader action on 𝙎𝙪𝙪𝙧𝙘𝙪. You can purchase it from 𝙎𝙪𝙪𝙧𝙘𝙪. It is going to be a paid extension, so you have to purchase it in order to use it. And as you can see, I have this great change log here. So I have fixed a lot of things since my previous version and added much more functionality, and there are huge major bug fixes in the shader and removed so many dependencies and all those stuff. So yeah, I have put a lot of effort into this shader action. And now let me just show you the trick which I was talking about, the fake real-time shadows and how to use them. So I have to close this example, as you already have been familiar with how to set up your 3D model for the custom lighting, and you have to adjust these lighting parameters or lighting settings according to your uh, 3D models and according to your game or according to your scene. For example, I have these 6 demo CCB file, which I'm going to provide along with the shader extension so that you can see how all those are using different uh, parameters and different settings for each model or to get different effects. So for example, in this T-Rex here, I'm using a different effect for this T-Rex. So you can see there is this great huge normal mapping, and if I press and hold down the F key, then the game will hang because you are not supposed to apply the shader continuously. So it should be executed once, so you can use it on, before first drawing or something like that. So you don't have to press it continuously. So if you hold down the F key, then the whole game will be hanged, or it is not supposed to work like this. So all you have to do is you have to execute the shader once and you are done with it. It will automatically grab all the light nodes and all the data that has been changed in your game. So you don't have to execute again and again. Otherwise, it will be going to freeze your game. And you can see how cool this T-Rex look here. So we have a great normal mapping here and some specular highlights. These are very tight specular highlights. And then we have this shadow here, and it looks pretty smooth. There are no edges or nothing like that. And how is it possible? So there is a nasty trick I'm doing here. As you can see, the T-Rex suddenly become black and it is inverted now, or it appears upside down. So yeah, I am actually using 2 instances of my T-Rex model, one with original texture with specular highlighting, diffuse texture, normal maps, and ambient occlusion maps, and one with a black texture applied to it, and it is vertically aligned to my original T-Rex. And then there is a plane mesh in between both the T-Rex with additive transparency and solid white texture, and it gives us this fake real-time shadows. But it is not the recommend way to get the real-time shadows. But if you are creating a 3D model viewer which can render only a single 3D object or one or two 3D object, then it is okay to use, you know, multiple models or multiple instances of your 3D model, and then invert them and vertically align them below the original object. So it will mimic or give you the illusion of real-time shadows with soft shadows, and it looks really, really great. There is no dynamic lighting here for the plan mesh. It is not receiving any real-time shadows. So yeah, that's it. This is how it works. And let's just watch our video again. So we have this custom shader applied to this creepy creature, and it gives a look of flesh on his body which is somewhat shiny. With the specular highlighting, it looks like it is glossy or something like that. And there is great amount of normal mapping in here. You can see the ribs and the chest part with normal mapping. Then we have this car here with the specular highlights, and there is windows which are using transparent additive transparency, so you can see through these glasses or windows of this car. And I don't know if you have noticed it or not, but there is something else hidden in this demo. So you can see here, you can see two two car textures here, or two tires here. So there is a miniature car model inside this bigger car. So yeah, it is a hidden object inside the car. And then we have this robot here with no specular highlighting, and with a combination of diffuse and ambient lighting, which gives it brownish texture, brownish tint, while in reality this object is gray in color. So there is no brown or orange color for this object here, or this 3D model here. It is completely gray. So yeah, this is how you can use bunch of different settings to get desired result. Then we have our rhinoceros again, and yeah, it is only using a solid specular texture and solid white specular, ambient occlusion map, but it has a normal and diffuse map. And you are going to get all these demo files along with the shader action or extension. So then we have our robot here, which we have used for the demonstration. Then we have our T-Rex, and that's it. You will get all these 6 demo files along with the shader extension. And there is also one more thing that you are going to get, which is a no normal texture map, or a plain empty normal map here. So you can use it whenever you don't want to use normal mapping in your shader or something like that. So you can use this normal texture. So I hope you like the video, or if you like the shader, you can go ahead and purchase it from 𝙎𝙪𝙙𝙪. Link will be in the description down below. And if you want to test out the shader, how it works or how it looks, you can also try the previous version of the shader, which is available for free from my website www.neophyte.cf. You can also get some other extension and shaders from my website, and they are completely free to get from there. And this shader is way much more advanced than the previous version or its predecessors. So it is hugely updated with major bug fixes and all those things. So I highly recommend you to use this version instead of the previous version. But if you are going to use free version, then it's up to you, and I will still support the free version as well. So yeah, you can use that as well if you want, but that will be limited or will not work as expected, or will not provide that much features as this shader action provides. And yeah, that's pretty much it. This is how you can use the shader. And if you like the video, then give it a thumbs up. Comment down your feedback on my 𝙎𝙪𝙪𝙙𝙪 page or in the comment section down below. If you have any queries or questions about the shader, you can send me a DM on my Discord server, or you can join the Discord server GLITCHEDVELO and interact with the community there. So that's it. Have a good night. Bye bye. Hasta la vista. Peace out.